I woke up from what should have been a simple gallbladder surgery, and everyone was calling me Lyra. The problem? My name is Zara. I'm 34 years old, and when I looked in the mirror, the woman staring back at me had someone else's face. Before I tell you how I ended up living someone else's life, let me introduce you to who I really am. My name is Zara Thessaly, and I'm that art teacher everyone remembers from high school. You know the one, paint under her fingernails, coffee stains on her cardigan, always ready with a tissue when a student has a breakdown over their pottery project exploding in the kiln. I've been teaching ceramics and painting at Roosevelt High in Portland for 8 years now. My classroom walls are covered with student artwork that ranges from breathtaking to hilariously awful. But I display them all with equal pride because every piece represents someone's courage to create something from nothing. My husband Caspian is a construction foreman with calloused hands and the gentlest heart you've ever seen. He's the kind of man who builds tree houses without being asked and fixes broken things before you even notice they're broken. We've been married for 15 years, and he still leaves little notes in my lunch bag that make me smile during faculty meetings. Our daughter Indira just turned 12, and she's at that wonderful, terrible age where she's too cool for hugs in public, but still crawls into our bed during thunderstorms. She has her father's steady nature and my creative chaos, which means our house is always filled with half-finished art projects and the sound of her practicing violin. I live the kind of predictable, beautiful life that doesn't make for exciting stories. I grade papers while watching cooking shows I'll never actually cook from. I keep emergency granola bars in my desk drawer for students who forgot lunch money. I know every kid's birthday, every parent's name, and exactly which students need an extra moment of encouragement to believe in themselves. My younger brother Orion lives in Seattle, where he works as a marine biologist and sends me pictures of sea creatures that look like they belong in my most abstract paintings. He's 3 years younger, but acts like my protective older brother, calling every Sunday to make sure I'm eating enough vegetables and not working too late. My parents, Celeste and Thaddeus, retired to a little house in Bend 2 years ago. Mom still calls every morning to tell me what she's planning to cook for dinner, even though I live 3 hours away. Dad sends me articles about art education that he clips from newspapers because he's never quite figured out how to use email attachments. This is my life. Normal, quiet, filled with the kind of small joys that make you grateful for ordinary Tuesday mornings. I mention all of this because in just a few minutes, I'm going to tell you how I woke up and discovered that none of this life belonged to me. How I found out that the woman everyone thought I was had been dead for 3 weeks. And somehow, impossibly, I had been living her memories as if they were my own. But first, you need to understand who I really am. Because that's the only way you'll understand how terrifying it was to lose myself completely and find someone else staring back at me from every mirror, every photograph, every single piece of identification in my purse. My name is Zara Thessaly. At least that's what I thought until the day I woke up and everyone started calling me by a dead woman's name. Tuesday morning started like every other morning in my perfectly ordinary life. I woke up at 6:15 to the sound of my alarm, rolled over to kiss Caspian goodbye before his early shift, and padded downstairs in my fuzzy slippers to start the coffee maker. The kitchen smelled like the vanilla candle Indira had insisted we buy last weekend, and everything felt exactly as it should. Indira stumbled downstairs 20 minutes later, her dark hair sticking up in every direction, complaining that she couldn't find her favorite sweater. I found it in the laundry basket, still warm from the dryer, and watched her face light up the way it always did when small problems got solved before breakfast. These are the moments that make up a life, I thought, buttering her toast and packing her lunch with the sandwich cut into triangles because she claimed they tasted better that way. Don't forget you have art club after school, I reminded her, tucking a note into her lunch bag that read, "You're my favorite masterpiece in purple ink." She rolled her eyes but smiled, and I knew she'd show it to her friends later because she always did. Caspian grabbed his coffee mug and hard hat, kissing my forehead before heading out to the construction site where his crew was building a new community center. "Try not to let the sophomore ceramics class blow anything up today," he teased, referring to last week's incident when Bradley Morrison had somehow managed to create a small explosion with clay and enthusiasm. The drive to Roosevelt High took exactly 17 minutes, and I spent them listening to NPR and thinking about the spring art show we were planning. This year's theme was Hidden Beauty, and I was excited to see what my students would create. Teaching high school art isn't just about technique or color theory. It's about giving teenagers permission to express the complicated feelings they can't put into words. My classroom was my sanctuary. The morning light streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced above work tables covered in paint splatters from years of creative chaos. I had 45 minutes before first period, which I always used to prepare materials and mentally rehearse the day's lessons. Today we were starting a unit on self-portraits, and I'd planned to show them how to see beyond their own insecurities to capture something true about themselves. But as I arranged brushes and squeezed paint onto palettes, I felt a strange, sharp pain in my right side. I pressed my hand against it, thinking I'd probably slept wrong or pulled something while moving canvases around yesterday. The pain faded, so I dismissed it and focused on greeting my students as they filed in for first period. Emma Rodriguez showed me her latest drawing, a detailed sketch of her grandmother's hands that captured decades of hard work and gentle love. Marcus Thompson, usually more interested in basketball than art, surprised me by asking thoughtful questions about shading techniques. These are the moments that remind me why I became a teacher, watching young people discover they're capable of creating something beautiful. But during second period, the pain returned with a vengeance. It felt like someone was driving a hot knife between my ribs, and I had to grip the edge of my desk to keep from doubling over. My student Ashley noticed immediately. "Miss Thessaly, are you okay? You look really pale." I managed to smile and told them to continue working on their projects while I stepped into the hallway. The pain was getting worse, radiating up into my shoulder and down toward my hip. I took slow, deep breaths, thinking it would pass. But by the time the bell rang, I could barely stand upright. My colleague Naya Chen found me in the hallway leaning against the wall and trying not to vomit. Naya teaches English in the classroom next to mine, and we've shared lunch duty and mutual complaints about school board decisions for the past 5 years. She took one look at me and said, "We're going to the hospital, now." I tried to protest. I had 3 more classes to teach, papers to grade, and the spring art show proposal to finish. But Naya wasn't having it. She called the office to arrange for substitutes, grabbed my purse from my desk, and practically carried me to her car. The drive to Portland General Hospital was a blur of traffic lights and increasingly intense pain. Naya kept glancing at me with worry, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand when I couldn't suppress a groan. "It's probably just a pulled muscle," I kept saying. But deep down, I knew this was something more serious. By the time we reached the emergency room, I could barely walk. The triage nurse took one look at me and immediately called for a wheelchair. Everything happened quickly after that. Blood tests, an ultrasound, concerned faces whispering in medical terminology I didn't understand. Then Dr. Amara Blackwood appeared, her expression serious but reassuring. "Zara, you have acute gallbladder inflammation. We need to remove it today or you risk serious complications." Surgery. The word hit me like a physical blow, not because I was afraid, but because it felt so surreal. This morning I'd been worried about art supplies and lesson plans, and now I was facing an operating room. I woke up to the sound of hushed voices and the steady, rhythmic beeping of monitors. My mouth felt like cotton, and there was a dull ache in my abdomen where they'd made the incisions. The recovery room was dimly lit, and I could make out shadows moving around my bed. Everything felt foggy, like I was looking at the world through frosted glass. A nurse appeared beside me, her face kind but unfamiliar. She wore purple scrubs and had her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. "Good morning, Lyra," she said softly, checking the IV line in my arm. "How are you feeling?" The name hit me like ice water. Lyra. Why was she calling me Lyra? I tried to speak, but only a hoarse croak came out. My throat felt raw, probably from the breathing tube during surgery. I swallowed hard and tried again. "I'm Zara," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not Lyra." The nurse paused, her hand still on my IV tube. She gave me a gentle smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're still a bit groggy from the anesthesia, honey. That's completely normal. Dr. Blackwood will be in to see you soon." Before I could protest further, I heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Caspian's work boots made a distinctive sound on hospital floors, and I felt relief wash over me. He would straighten this out. He would tell this confused nurse that I was Zara Thessaly, his wife of 15 years. But when Caspian appeared in the doorway, his eyes were red-rimmed and swollen from crying. He looked like he'd aged years in the few hours since I'd last seen him. He rushed to my bedside and took my hand in both of his calloused fingers trembling. "Thank God you're awake, Lyra," he whispered, his voice breaking. "We were so worried. You've been unconscious for so long." The world seemed to tilt sideways. My own husband, the man who'd shared my bed for 15 years, who knew every freckle on my body and every dream in my heart, was calling me by the wrong name. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that he was joking, but there was only desperate relief and overwhelming love. "Caspian," I said, gripping his hand tighter. "What's wrong with you? Why are you calling me Lyra? I'm Zara. I'm your wife, Zara." His face crumpled, and he looked toward the doorway with an expression I'd never seen before. It was fear mixed with something else, something that made my stomach clench with dread. "Lyra, sweetheart, you hit your head. The doctors said there might be some confusion." Before I could respond, Indira appeared beside him, my beautiful 12-year-old daughter, but she looked different somehow, older. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, and she was wearing clothes I'd never seen before. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked at me with a mixture of hope and terror. "Mom," she whispered, but then she caught herself. "Lyra, do you remember us? Do you remember me?" The wrongness of it hit me like a physical blow. My own daughter was calling me by someone else's name, looking at me like I was a stranger she desperately wanted to recognize her. I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my abdomen and the room began to spin. "Stop it," I said, my voice getting stronger despite the pain. "Both of you, stop calling me Lyra. I don't know who Lyra is, but I'm not her. I'm Zara Thessaly. I teach art at Roosevelt High. We live in the blue house on Maple Street. Indira, you just started middle school and you're learning to play violin. Caspian, you're building the new community center downtown." They exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. It was the kind of look parents share when their child says something that breaks their hearts, when they have to figure out how to deliver terrible news with gentle words. Dr. Blackwood entered the room at that moment, her expression carefully neutral. She approached my bed slowly, like she was approaching a frightened animal. "Good afternoon, Lyra. I'm glad to see you're awake. How are you feeling?" "My name is Zara," I said firmly, looking directly into her eyes. "Zara Thessaly. Everyone keeps calling me Lyra, and I don't understand why." Dr. Blackwood pulled up a chair beside my bed, her movements deliberate and calm. "You suffered a severe head injury," she explained gently. "You've been unconscious for 3 weeks. Memory confusion and identity displacement can be common with this type of trauma. Your brain is trying to protect itself, and sometimes that protection can manifest in unexpected ways." 3 weeks. The words echoed in my head like a scream. I'd been unconscious for 3 weeks, not a few hours, but that was impossible. I remembered everything perfectly. I remembered making Indira's lunch that morning, kissing Caspian goodbye, teaching my first period class. I remembered the pain starting, Naya driving me to the hospital, Dr. Blackwood explaining about my gallbladder. "You're confused," I told her, my voice shaking. "I had gallbladder surgery this morning. I remember everything. Ask Naya Chen. She drove me here." The silence in the room was deafening. Caspian squeezed my hand tighter, and I could feel him shaking. Indira moved closer to her father, and I noticed she was taller than I remembered. How could she have grown in a single day? "Sweetheart," Caspian said softly, "there was no gallbladder surgery. You were in a car accident 3 weeks ago." The word accident hung in the air like smoke, choking me. I stared at Caspian's face, searching for any crack in what had to be an elaborate lie, but his eyes held nothing but truth and devastating sadness. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was telling me. 3 weeks unconscious, a car accident instead of surgery, everyone calling me Lyra instead of my own name. "You're lying," I whispered. But even as the words left my mouth, I could feel doubt creeping in. Why would they lie? What possible reason could my own family have for pretending I was someone else? Dr. Blackwood leaned forward, her voice gentle but clinical. Lyra, I know this is confusing and frightening. Traumatic brain injuries can cause significant memory disturbances. Sometimes patients experience what we call confabulation, where the brain creates false memories to fill in gaps. False memories? The words came out sharp and angry. These aren't false memories. I remember my entire life. I remember teaching at Roosevelt High for 8 years. I remember our wedding 15 years ago, Caspian. I remember giving birth to Indira. I remember last Tuesday morning making her lunch, cutting her sandwich into triangles because she says they taste better that way. Indira gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She looked at her father with wide, frightened eyes. She remembers the triangles, she whispered. Mom always cut my sandwiches into triangles. But instead of relief, this seemed to make everyone more upset. Caspian's face went pale, and Dr. Blackwood made a note on her clipboard with quick, urgent strokes. The nurse who had been checking my vitals stepped back, her expression troubled. I want to see identification, I demanded, my voice growing stronger despite the growing pit of fear in my stomach. Bring me my purse. Show me my driver's license, my credit cards, anything with my name on it. My brother Orion appeared in the doorway at that moment, still wearing his marine biology field clothes like he'd rushed straight from work. His usually cheerful face was drawn with exhaustion and worry. Zara, he started, then caught himself. Lyra, you're awake. Thank God. Even Orion, my own brother, was calling me by the wrong name. I watched him embrace Caspian, watched him ruffle Indira's hair with the easy familiarity of a beloved uncle, and felt the last piece of my certainty crumble. Orion, I said, my voice breaking. Tell them my name is Zara. You're my brother, you've known me my entire life. He approached my bed cautiously, his oceanographer hands steady despite the tremor I could see in his shoulders. I brought your purse, he said quietly, setting a brown leather bag on the bedside table. It looked familiar but wrong somehow, like a photograph that was slightly out of focus. With shaking hands, I opened it and pulled out a wallet. The leather was worn in places I didn't remember wearing it. I flipped it open to the driver's license window, and the world tilted sideways. The license read Lyra Thessaly in clear black letters. My birth date, my address, even a photo that looked like me. But the signature at the bottom was all wrong. The handwriting was similar to mine, but different in subtle ways, like someone had been copying my signature without quite getting it right. This isn't my signature, I said, holding up the license. Someone forged this. Dr. Blackwood gently took the license from my hands and showed it to me again. Look at the issue date, she said softly. This license is 3 years old. Look at the wear patterns, the way the photo has faded slightly. This isn't a forgery, Lyra. I dumped the entire contents of the purse onto my hospital bed. Credit cards, all reading Lyra Thessaly. A health insurance card with the same name. Receipts from stores I remembered shopping at but dated weeks ago when I should have been in school teaching. A grocery list written in handwriting that looked like mine but felt foreign. I want a mirror, I said suddenly, the words coming out sharp and desperate. I want to see myself. The room went silent. Everyone exchanged those looks again, the kind of looks that meant they all shared knowledge I didn't have. Dr. Blackwood cleared her throat nervously. Now, perhaps we should wait until you're feeling stronger, she suggested. Head injuries can cause facial swelling, bruising. It might be distressing to see yourself right now. I don't care about bruises, I snapped. I want to see my face. I want to see myself right now. Nurse Raven stepped forward, her expression kind but worried. Sometimes, after trauma, patients can experience a condition called prosopagnosia, where familiar faces look different or unfamiliar. Even their own reflection can seem wrong. Stop making excuses, I said, my voice rising despite the pain it caused in my throat. If I'm really Lyra Thessaly, if this is really my life, then I should recognize my own face. Bring me a mirror right now, or I'm getting out of this bed and finding one myself. I started to sit up, ignoring the sharp pain in my abdomen and the dizziness that made the room spin. Caspian gently placed his hands on my shoulders, trying to ease me back down, but I pushed against him. I'm not crazy. I said, tears starting to stream down my face. Something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong, and a mirror will prove it. If you won't bring me one, I'll find one myself. The desperation in my voice must have convinced them. Caspian looked at Dr. Blackwood, who nodded reluctantly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, compact mirror, the kind I'd carried in my purse for years. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the beeping monitors. Whatever I was about to see, whatever truth was waiting in that mirror, I had to know. I had to understand why everyone I loved was calling me by a dead woman's name. Caspian's hands trembled as he held the compact mirror, and I could see my own fear reflected in his eyes before I even looked at my reflection. The room had gone completely silent except for the steady beeping of my heart monitor, which seemed to be getting faster with each passing second. "Please," I whispered, reaching for the mirror. "I need to see." He placed it in my hands reluctantly, and I noticed that everyone in the room had positioned themselves closer to me, like they were preparing to catch me if I fell. Indira clutched her father's arm, and Orion moved to the other side of my bed. Even Dr. Blackwood stepped forward, her professional composure barely concealing her concern. I lifted the mirror slowly, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. For a split second, I saw nothing but the overhead lights reflecting off the glass. Then I angled it toward my face, and the world as I knew it shattered completely. The woman staring back at me was not Zara Thessaly. I screamed. The sound that came out of my throat was raw and primal, the kind of scream that comes from a place deeper than fear, deeper than confusion. It was the sound of a soul recognizing that everything it thought it knew about itself was a lie. The face in the mirror had my eyes, the same hazel color with the gold flecks around the iris, but they were set in features that belonged to someone else entirely. The cheekbones were sharper, more defined than mine had ever been. The nose was different, straighter and more refined. There was a small scar above the left eyebrow that I had never had, a thin white line that looked old and well-healed. But it was more than just the individual features. This face had a different history written in its lines, different expressions worn into its muscles. When I smiled tentatively at my reflection, testing whether this could somehow be me, the smile looked foreign on these features, like I was wearing someone else's mask. "This isn't my face," I whispered, my voice hoarse from screaming. "This isn't my face. Whose face is this?" Dr. Blackwood gently took the mirror from my hands before I could throw it across the room. "Lyra, listen to me carefully. You've been through severe trauma. Sometimes facial injuries can change appearance, and sometimes brain injuries can affect how we perceive ourselves." "Don't you dare," I snarled, a fury rising in me that I'd never felt before. "Don't you dare try to explain this away with medical terminology. This is not my face. I know my own face. I've looked at it every morning for 34 years, and this is not it." Caspian sat down heavily in the chair beside my bed, his face buried in his hands. When he looked up, there were tears streaming down his cheeks. "We have to tell her," he said to Dr. Blackwood. "We can't keep doing this. She deserves to know the truth." "Tell me what?" I demanded, grabbing his arm. "What truth? What aren't you telling me?" My parents chose that moment to arrive. I heard my mother Celeste's voice in the hallway before I saw her, that familiar cadence that had comforted me through childhood nightmares and adult heartbreaks. But when she appeared in the doorway, she looked older than I remembered, more fragile, like she'd been crying for weeks. "My baby girl," she said, rushing to my bedside. "You're finally awake." But even she called me Lyra, my own mother, who had given birth to me, who had named me Zara after her grandmother, was calling me by someone else's name. I searched her face desperately for any sign of recognition, any acknowledgement that I was her daughter Zara, but there was nothing. "Mom," I pleaded, "tell them who I am. Tell them my name is Zara Valdez, not Thessaly. Tell them you're Celeste Valdez, and Dad is Thaddeus Valdez, and Orion is my little brother who studies sea creatures." My mother's face crumpled, and she looked at Dr. Blackwood with desperate confusion. "She remembers us, but the names are all wrong." How is that possible? That's when Dr. Blackwood made the decision that changed everything. She pulled up a chair directly in front of my bed and looked me straight in the eyes, with the kind of expression doctors wear when they're about to deliver news that will destroy your world. "The truth is," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to say, "you were in a car accident 3 weeks ago. There were 2 vehicles involved, and 2 people in your car. One of them died on impact." The room went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. The woman who died was named Lyra Thessaly. She was 34 years old, an art teacher at Roosevelt High, married to Caspian, mother to Indira. The woman who survived, who's been unconscious for 3 weeks, who woke up today with all of Lyra's memories, is named Zara Valdez. The words hit me like physical blows. I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "You're saying I'm not Lyra Thessaly?" "No," Dr. Blackwood said gently. "You're Zara Valdez. But somehow, impossibly, you have all of Lyra Thessaly's memories. You remember her life as if you lived it yourself. You remember her husband, her daughter, her job, her daily routines, because for reasons we don't understand, her memories transferred to you during the trauma." Caspian leaned forward, his voice breaking. "Lyra was your best friend. You were driving to her house when the accident happened. You've been living her life in your mind while your body healed, but Lyra died 3 weeks ago." The room began to spin as the full horror of the situation crashed over me. I wasn't losing my memory. I was remembering someone else's life. The woman whose face I saw in the mirror wasn't me recovering from injuries. It was me discovering I had been living as a ghost, carrying the memories of my dead best friend while her family grieved around my unconscious body. "Lyra is dead," I whispered, the words feeling like broken glass in my throat. "And I've been living her life." The weeks that followed were the strangest, most painful period of my life. I had to learn to live as Zara Valdez while grieving for Lyra Thessaly, a woman whose memories I carried like precious cargo, but whose life I could never truly claim as my own. My real parents, Tom and Linda Valdez, came to visit every day, bringing photo albums and stories from my actual childhood. They showed me pictures of myself as a little girl, with gap-toothed smiles and pigtails, trying to help me remember who I really was. But those memories felt distant and faded, like looking at someone else's vacation photos. The hardest part was watching Lyra's family struggle with loving me while mourning her. Caspian would sit beside my hospital bed for hours, talking to me about their life together, showing me videos on his phone of family vacations and birthday parties. I could see him searching my face for any trace of the woman he'd lost, and it broke my heart every time he looked disappointed. Indira was the most heartbreaking of all. She would visit after school, curled up in the chair beside my bed, doing homework while stealing glances at me like she was trying to memorize my face. One afternoon, she brought me a painting she'd made in art class, a portrait of a woman with kind eyes and paint-stained fingers. "I painted this from memory," she said quietly. "It's supposed to be Mom. I mean, Lyra. I mean, you when you were her." She started crying then, 12 years old and trying to navigate grief that no child should have to understand. "I miss her so much, but you have her eyes. You laugh like her sometimes. It's confusing." I held her while she cried, and in that moment I understood something profound. Love doesn't require DNA or shared history. This little girl needed a mother figure, and somehow, through impossible circumstances, I had become the keeper of her mother's love. Dr. Blackwood explained that my case was medically unprecedented. "We've seen memory transfer in some rare cases of severe trauma," she told me during one of our sessions, "but never to this extent. You didn't just absorb random memories, you absorbed an entire identity, complete with emotional connections and learned behaviors." The investigation into the accident revealed the devastating truth about that night 3 weeks ago. Lyra had called me, sobbing, asking me to come over. She and Caspian had been going through a difficult separation, though they were trying to work things out for Indira's sake. She was lonely and scared, and I had rushed to be with her because that's what best friends do. We'd been driving back from dinner, Lyra in the passenger seat, when a drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into her side of the car. The impact killed her instantly, but somehow, in those final moments of consciousness before my own injuries took hold, her memories had somehow transferred to me. My real life, the one I'd forgotten, was different from Lyra's, but not unhappy. I was single, teaching art at a different high school across town. I lived in a small apartment filled with my own paintings and had been saving money to open my own art studio someday. I had close friendships, including my deep bond with Lyra, but I'd never married or had children. Learning to be Zara again while carrying Lyra's memories was like learning to speak a new language while trying to remember your native tongue. Some days I would automatically reach for coffee creamer that Lyra loved, but Zara had always drunk her coffee black. Other days I would panic when I couldn't remember my real mother's maiden name because Lyra's mother's name felt more familiar. But the most surprising discovery came 6 months later, when Caspian asked me to coffee, not as Lyra's replacement, but as Zara, the woman who had been his wife's best friend and who now carried pieces of both their lives. "I've been thinking," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with nervous precision, "about love and memory and what makes a person who they are. You're not Lyra, and I'm not asking you to be, but you carry her love for Indira, and you understand her heart in ways no one else can. Maybe that's enough to build something new on." It wasn't a romantic proposition, not at first. It was something more practical and more profound, a recognition that families can be created from love and necessity, not just blood and tradition. Indira needed stability. Caspian needed help navigating single parenthood, and I needed to honor the memories I carried while learning to live my own life. Today, 2 years later, I teach art at Roosevelt High in Lyra's old classroom. I kept her job not because I was trying to be her, but because when I walked into that space, it felt like coming home. Her students had become my students, and her lesson plans had evolved into my own teaching style. Indira calls me Aunt Zara now, but sometimes, when she's hurt or scared, she slips and calls me Mom. We've all agreed that's okay. Love doesn't follow neat categories, and grief doesn't stick to timelines. We're creating our own kind of family, built on the foundation of loss but held together by choice. I keep a small framed photo of Lyra on my desk, not as a shrine, but as a reminder that love transcends death, that memories can be gifts even when they come wrapped in tragedy. My students sometimes ask about the photo, and I tell them it's my best friend who taught me that the people we love most deeply never really leave us. The most important lesson I learned from living someone else's life is that identity isn't just about memory or genetics or the name on your driver's license. It's about the love you give and receive, the choices you make every day, and the way you honor both your own story and the stories of those who shape you. I am Zara Valdez, but I carry Lyra Thessaly's love for her family, her passion for teaching, and her belief that art can heal broken hearts. I'm not the same person I was before the accident, but I'm not trying to be. I'm something new, something that couldn't have existed without tragedy, but has become beautiful in its own unique way. Sometimes the most profound healing comes from the most impossible circumstances. Sometimes love finds a way to survive even death, carried forward by someone who understands the preciousness of every ordinary moment, every triangle-cut sandwich, every paint-stained hug. I'm still learning to be myself while honoring someone else's memory, but I've discovered that's not a burden to carry. It's a gift to treasure. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that love can survive anything, even the impossible. Leave a comment below telling me about a time when love surprised you with its resilience. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about the extraordinary ways ordinary people navigate life's most challenging moments. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that remind us that healing comes in forms we never expected, and that family can be created from the most unlikely circumstances.